There is a tradition among those who study the Talmud, those who know about the Talmud, that within the Talmud there is an understanding of a particular word, and it's called Taiku. Taiku has a literal meaning, but it's an idea. The literal meaning is an acronym for Tishbi Taras Kushiot Vibayot, which means a Tishbite, Elijah. When he comes, heralding the Messiah, and in the Messianic era, we will have all of our questions answered. All questions will be answered. So Tishbi, the Tishbite, Elijah, the Tishbite, Yitaretz will answer Kushiot, questions, Vibayot, and I guess it's another word for question, quandaries or inquiries or difficulties. And there is someone who put together a book called Taiku, a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Aharon Yeshua Pessin, and I think it was published in the year 2006 or Tafshin Samach Vav, and which is 5,766. Right. Samach Vav, yeah. And he put together all these unresolved questions that appear in the Babylonian Talmud. He lists 317 of them. And when I heard about this book and his idea, I immediately was intrigued by it and decided to follow suit in the sense that I wanted to do something similar that he did. And I'm using his book to do it. But what I'm doing is I'm just reading all of these taikus, these unresolved questions, because he makes a point in this introduction that when Elijah comes and the Messiah comes and we're going to have a chance to ask our questions, but what are we going to ask if we don't have the questions? How many people, myself included, can say that they know all of the taikus, all these unresolved questions in the Talmud, that if, let's just say, the Messiah would come today and asks you, what are your questions? I will answer them. Do we have all the questions? And this goes even further than just taikus. This might be a lesson in general, to have our questions prepared, whatever questions we have, to have them ready to be asked if we have the opportunity to ask them. And I was very much in alignment, and I resonated with that point a lot. And so much so that I decided to do this thing where I'm asking the questions, the taikus that were asked many hundreds of years ago, approaching 2,000 years ago, like 1,800, 1,700 years ago, something like that. And here it is. So this, every once in a while I'll do an introduction like that. This is the 20th Taiku, starting from the first Taiku, which appeared in Tractate Brachot, page 8. This is the 20th. It appears in Tractate Shabbat, page 99b, with the word Bai Rava. Rava raised a dilemma. Zorak daf v'nach al gabe yetedot. Mahu. Mai kami bayale. Hanachat chafetz v'estyat mechitza ba'adad yad adikatu hainu l'Rabbi Yochanan. Rava raised a similar dilemma in a case where one threw a board and it landed on top of stakes that are 10 handbreadths high but not 4 handbreadths wide. What is the ruling? Once the board lands, the surface is 10 handbreadths high and 4 handbreadths wide. The Gemara asks, what is his dilemma? Does his dilemma pertain to the ruling in a case where the placement of the object and the establishment of the partition came about simultaneously? That is precisely the dilemma raised by Rabbi Yochanan. Ki kami bayale Rava kegon dezorak dam v'chafetz al gabav mai. כיוון דהדי הדדי כעתו, כי הנחת חבץ וסייד מחיצה דמי או דילמה, כיוון דלא אפשר, דלא מדלאי פורטה, וידר נייך, כעשיית מחיצה והנחת חפץ דמי, Taiku. The Gemara answers, the case where Rava raised a dilemma is more complex. His dilemma is with regard to a case where one threw a board and there was an object resting on top of the board. In that case, what is the ruling? The two sides of the dilemma are, since the board and the object come simultaneously, the legal status is similar to a case where the placement of the object and the establishment of the partition came about simultaneously. The object and the board are a single unit that creates a partition when it lands, and therefore one is exempt. Or perhaps we say that since it is impossible when they land for the object not to rise slightly and then land because the object and the board are not connected, like if they were super glued to each other, okay, they're totally connected. But this is just on top of it, and it's flying with it as it's flying. When it lands, it's definitely going to move. Is it like the case where the establishment of the partition was completed and the placement of the object followed, and therefore one is liable? These dilemmas remain, and therefore let it stand unresolved until Elijah and the Messiah arrive, and we have the opportunity to ask this question.